2022 regular meeting of Fairview Town Council. This time, Councilman Clark will have our invocation.
Let's all bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you for bringing us here together today. We thank thee for the opportunity to try to conduct and govern our town, our community. Lord, we ask thee to be with us. Give us the guidance so that the decisions we make will be the correct decisions for our community. We ask thee, Lord, to be with those that are sick throughout the area. Be with us, Lord, as we go on tonight. And as we go on tonight, keep us safe, keep us healthy. We ask this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We move to agenda changes. I have two changes I'd like to add to the agenda. I'd like to discuss an act on cutting off the rental house from the park property. Make that item number 2 under the business. And item number 3, Christmas gifts to staff. Are there any other agenda changes? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor? And the agenda is approved. Do we have any public comments?
No.
Okay, there are no public comments. We'll move to the consent agenda. If there's nothing anyone would like to pull off the consent agenda, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
All in favor? Consent agenda is approved. Move to item 4, items of business. Item number 1, presentation of 2021-22 town audit. Neil Bennett, J.B. Watson and Company. Neil, it's good to have you back.
It's good to be back. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing us to do your audit. You have a great group of people to work with. You probably already know that. I know the last few years I've kind of roadmapped you through the financial statement, and I don't think you need that anymore. I'd rather just take this time to point out some new things in the financial statement, point out some items that I think might be of interest to you. There are a few things I have to go over with you according to auditing standards and according to the local government commission, and then I will, as always, answer any questions you have. And stop me at any point. I do not mind interruptions. If you will flip through past the table of contents, you will come to the independent auditor's report in your audited financial statement. This is a clean opinion as you've had in the past. We are opining that your financial statements are materially correct. It is a completely new format this year. This was not of my choosing. The auditing standards setters came along and said, I don't think users of financial statements understand all of this report. So we're going to rearrange it and put it where we think they will understand it more clearly. I don't think they did that. And I'm not sure they accomplished that. They may have muddied the water a little bit, but I don't want you to be looking at last year's financial statement and this year's financial statement and say, oh my, something's different, it's something wrong. So I'll just briefly go over the new format for you. It was the opinion at the top. The opinion used to be at the very end of the report. The opinion is at the very top, and it says we think your financial statements are materially correct. Then it has the basis for opinions, and here is where we let you know whether we performed your audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards or to the next level of assurance under governmental auditing standards. Your audit this year was performed in accordance with government auditing standards, and that was required because you had more than $100,000 in grant expenditures. As long as you're under that $100,000 threshold, you just have a basic general audit. once you exceed the 100,000, which you did with your ARPA and your state appropriation, then we have to do a little bit more testing, a little bit more assurance. The next section of the audit report is your responsibilities for the audit of the financial statements. Then on page 2, we disclose our responsibilities for the audit of the financial statement. And there's a new bullet, well, they're bullets, they weren't bullets before. There's a new bullet this year that talks about substantial doubt and continuing as a going concern. This is something you've probably never seen before in your audit report. We've always looked to see, we are required to look and see if what is considered a going concern, which means you will continue going for 12 months after the year we've audited. This is in commercial audits, this is in governmental audits. We've never had to raise it to the level of our opinion, but we now have to opine on whether we think you are a valid going concern, and of course we think you are, and that is disclosed in that last bullet in the middle of the second page. As in the past, we have a paragraph on your required supplementary information and on your supplementary information. Your required supplementary information is the management discussion and analysis at the front. And then if you had pensions, if you had retiree health insurance or anything like that, that would also be what's considered RSI. And then the supplementary information is just your detailed budget versus actual reports at the back of the financial statement. So that just lets you know about those. That's been in the report before, it's just in a different place. And then the last paragraph this year is new to you for the last few years. It just tells you that we did audit your financial statement in accordance with government auditing standards, and that means we looked at internal controls over financial reporting, and we looked at your compliance with laws, regulations, grants, and contracts, and that's all because you had grant money this year. The next section is the management discussion and analysis, which you had before. The only thing I want to point out here is that it is comparative. Your financial statements are for a single year. So if you want like a good summary and you want to be able to see 2 years beside each other, that will be in this section of the audit report. And then on Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, I just want to remind you, these are accrual basis. These are more like a business. They have your capital assets, they have any long-term debt. And this year, the only thing, there are 2 new things on here. You do have restricted cash and cash equivalents this year, and that's your grant money. If you receive funds from an outside party and it's restricted for a particular purpose, we don't include it in just your regular cash and cash equivalents, so that's your restricted cash and cash equivalents, that second line on Exhibit 1, that $271,000. And then that money is also down at the bottom under net position. It's also shown as restricted, and that's the money you still have left on those capital project funds for the town hall and the park from your state appropriation. So those are some new line items this year.
What's the stabilization by state statute?
That is simply your accounts receivable.
Okay.
It's net position that's restricted because you can't spend it because you don't have any cash. So it's an asset you have, but it's not spendable. And so by North Carolina state law, it is considered restricted fund balance. But it typically equals your accounts receivable. Exhibit 2 is that funny sideways statement that we talked about before that shows you your expenses and then what you charge to provide those services by function, and if you've had any grants to provide those services. And the whole point of that is that that far column shows you if each function stood on its own and what you charged for it covered the cost. And typically all of those are going to be negative. And then that shows you down at the bottom that your property taxes are what cover all your functions. You do have some positives this year, and here again, it's because of those grants. It's the ARPA salaries, the planning, and then your park and town hall grants. So there's some positive sections there in that far column that kind of look odd, but it's simply because you received more money than you dispersed on those grants. Beginning on page 3 with Exhibit 3-1, Exhibit 3-1 and Exhibit 4-1, we've now moved to your budgetary basis as you remember. This is more likely what Daryl would give you every month. It's in summary form, but it's your assets and liabilities on Exhibit 3-1 and your revenues and expenditures on Exhibit 4-1 in summary form, the details at the back. And this looks really different from last year because you now have a column for each of your grant funds. So in the past, all you had was the general fund. You now have a column for your ARPA fund, your park update fund, and your town hall update fund, and then a total at the end. That is all that's new on those. I just need to remind you on Exhibit 5 that that is just the general fund. In the past, you've not had any other funds for the past few years. You just had the general fund. So the things at the front were all government-wide. They included all your funds. Exhibit 5 is just your general fund, just your operating fund. And I would commend you that you budgeted to use, if needed, around $43,000 of fund balance. And as you see, your revenues over expenditures were around $62,000. So you didn't need to use any of your fund balance. You didn't use your savings this year. Your notes begin on page 8, and I'll just point out the things that are new here this year. At the bottom of 8 and the top of 9 are descriptions of your 3 new project funds. On page 11, there's a new note for your restricted cash. This is new for you. You typically not have restrictions on your cash. So this just shows the readers of the financial statement why your cash is restricted. On page 12 is a new note for your ARPA money. Last year, we had it at the end of the note as a subsequent event because you got the big payment right after June 30th. It's not so much a subsequent event now because you dealt with it during the year. You've talked about it. You adopted policy. This note just lets you know the total amount of your reward, that you received it in 2 payments, and that you as a board voted to use it as a revenue replacement and supplant your salaries with that money. On page 15, this is new, but if you wanted a good summary of your capital assets and your additions this year, that's on page 15. You'll see the town hall purchase and improvement. The construction in progress there of $8,123, that's what you've spent to date on that park master plan project. Long-term debt information is on page 17. You don't have any new debt. You made your scheduled payments, and this just shows you your maturities on that. And then on page 18, there is a new note for interfund transfers. You've not had funds to transfer money between before, but if you do have funds where you transfer monies between funds, that has to be disclosed. And that's just simply where you move the money from the ARPA fund to the general fund to cover salaries. Your detail notes or detail schedule is on page 19. Exhibit 8-1 is just your general fund. I did note when I was looking through this, your property taxes have gone up about $33,000 or 35% if you're comparing this to last year. Of course, that's due to your reval. But if you're looking at the 2 financial statements, I thought you'd like to know that. And then the only other thing that looked really different from the previous year is where you purchased the town hall, that $127,500 on page 20. The schedules on page 22, 23, and 24 are all new this year. These are your grant funds. So whenever you have a continuing fund, you don't adopt a budget for it for just a year. It's for the life of that project or that fund. So these will be in here as long as you have ARPA money or your state appropriations for town hall and the park. You'll have your project authorization, which is your budget. You'll have any prior year balances, which you don't have this year because these were new. Your revenues this year, and then the project to date. And there's if you're really into numbers like me, you'll notice that on Exhibit B-1, you actually received $133,598 of ARPA money in the year we audited. We only show revenue here of $131,299. This is what's called an expenditure-driven grant. So you only recognize revenue to the extent that you spent it. So the difference, which is around $2,300, is actually shown as unearned revenue at the front of the financial statements, which is kind of like a liability. You've got this money and you've got to disperse it, but you don't count it as revenue yet. So if you look at this and you think, oh, they made a mistake, we got more money than that, it's on your balance sheet as unearned revenue.
So we would eventually spend all that money over the next.
Right, and as you spend it, the revenue is recognized.
So eventually it's gonna zero itself out.
That's exactly right. They'll all wash out in the end. Now, the next two, Exhibit B-2 and Exhibit B-3, these are not considered expenditure-driven grants. So you went ahead and recognized the full $250,000 for the park and the full $50,000 for town hall. They look more normal. Your information on your property taxes are on pages 25 and 26. And here again, I was just comparing years. Your levy on page 26, I'm sorry, your property valuation on page 26 is around 619 million. Last year was 467 million. So here again, you're looking at like a 33% increase in valuation and in levy, all because of the revow that the county did. And then your collection percentages down at the bottom, they're holding steady with the prior year. There's a new section this year called the compliance section. It has another auditor's report on it. And here again, this is all because you spent more than $100,000. We just have to disclose to you that we look at your internal controls over financial reporting, which we look at anyway. And then we also look at your compliance with North Carolina general statutes, with your contracts, your grant agreements, and the only thing we found was what we've had each year is your lack of segregation of duties, which cannot be avoided. You can set up, oh my mind just went blank. You can set up controls to help with that, like your dual signatures on checks and your bank recs and all, but that will always be fine for the town. And then the very last page is your grant schedule. The top grant is your ARPA money. Here again, this isn't the full amount you received, this is just the amount that you did spend, that you did transfer to the general fund. The middle amount there is the grant for your town hall update, and the bottom grant, the state capital infrastructure, that's for your park update. And that's a quick run through of your financial statements. Do y'all have any questions about those before we move to any more of the presentation?
When I was reviewing all this ARPA stuff, something was said about a yellow book or yellow.
That's what it is. The government auditing standard is a yellow book.
Okay.
It's actually a yellow book. It's a paperback book and it's yellow, and it's been yellow since the 1980s when it came out. And so it's called a yellow book audit. That is just an audit in accordance with government auditing standards.
Okay.
We tend to call it a yellow book audit. You hear it back and forth. And then if you were to spend more than $750,000 in federal grants, then you have what's called a single audit. And that's also an audit in accordance with it's an OMB audit. We use so many letters, I'm sorry, but y'all weren't to that level yet. You just have the yellow book audit this year. And that's why we brought in, I think it was John and Daryl and Ed to the financial statements, because we had to have like another layer of independence for the fact that we write the financial statement. Y'all needed to review it and take a little bit more responsibility for it because of the yellow book audit.
Okay. Questions of the?
Well, I don't know if it made it easier or not, the changes, but for the first time, I actually followed you all the way through.
Well, that's good. We're doing good.
Either you getting better or I'm getting better.
Maybe I'm getting better at it. That's probably what it is. I have a few more things to go over though, so you gotta see if you can keep up. There is.
I thought you did a very good job.
Thank you. There is one loose letter in the, I hope you got it. This is required communication between the audit firm and the council, those charged with government. This is the same as what we have every year. The top paragraph again tells you we did the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards, which that's the yellow book. We have to disclose if there are any new accounting policies that you implemented this year and you did not. to you what we consider your significant estimates, and for you, that's depreciation, because that is an estimate of how long an asset will last and how to depreciate it. We have to let you know if we had any difficulties performing the audit, if we had any disagreements with management, we would have let you know that was now, but we are also required to have it in this formal written letter. We didn't have any of those. And there is a new thing at the back of this letter this year is a schedule, and I think it confuses people. So I just want to explain it to you. The audit says that your financial statements are materially correct. Do you have a little schedule?
I don't know.
You don't have that? Oh, no. Well, then I owe you a page. Well, this ain't gonna make much sense. I'll show it to you this way. If,
We can clear me.
I know, and you can see that 4K. If there's anything we find in the course of the audit that we don't think is material enough to make an adjustment to your books to, or Daryl doesn't think is material enough to make an adjustment to your books, we don't have to. I mean, your financial statements have to be materially correct. There was, and I owe you this page, I'll send them to you.
Okay.
There was a new Governmental Accounting Standards Board standard that came out this year about leases. The powers that be think that you rent your coffee machine. They think that it's not okay for you to just put that in rent expense every month, that you really have an asset that needs to go on the balance sheet. You have the right to use that asset, and that needs to be a dollar amount on your balance sheet. And you have the liability of paying that lease over the next 4, 5, 6 years. That needs to be a liability on your balance sheet, which makes sense in theory. The local government commission is amazing to work with as far as finance officers and the audit firms. They came up with this Excel spreadsheet that Daryl completed for us, and you pop in the dates of the lease, the dollar amounts, and it calculates what this value of this asset, this right to use an asset is, and this value of this liability is. And then we determine, is it material enough to completely rethink and redo your financial statements, or is it okay for you to just keep expensing your copier lease payment, each month? It was not material. In Daryl's opinion and in my opinion, it was not material. That's all this piece of paper says. It says that the total liability for this new way of calculating was around $4,600. And we put this information in a spreadsheet, and we pick up like total assets, total liabilities, total revenue off your audited financial statements and pop it in and calculate a percentage. Sometimes you'll have 3, 4, 5 different things that we could say, oh, that's not material. But when you put them all together in cumulative, they are material, and we do need to adjust your financial statements. The liability we did not book for your copier was 0.88% of your total liabilities. We did not think that was significant. And so you're just going to continue to book your lease payment month per month, which is perfectly okay. You're not doing anything wrong. We're just required to disclose that to you. But I evidently didn't. So.
What are they worried about?
They're worried about large companies that have tons of what they call off-balance sheet risk. I think it's more commercial than government. That you've got all these leases out here and nobody really knows the future liability for those leases. And if you put that liability on the books, debits and credits have to equal, so you gotta have an asset. So they came up with this thing called right of use asset. It's not an issue for most of my towns. You don't have hidden leases. You don't have a lot of off-balance sheet risk. I think it's gonna be more impactful of commercial businesses. So far, I'm not through with all my audits. We've not implemented it on a single client. I think I've got one client that we're going to have to. They do like a fleet management. They lease all their police vehicles and public works vehicles. That's significant. And I think they're going to have to implement it. I think most of my towns have, a copier, a few printers. They may have a right of way with CSX Railway or something like that. So I don't think it will impact you. But I will send you a copy of that sticker. I'll send it to you. I have two more things to go with you, I'm sorry, I'm taking too long. Because your financial statements are 1 year, I did my quick one-page summary for you that shows you your last 3 years, if you want to just kind of see a financial snapshot of what's happened the last 3 years. The far column has not changed since last year. LGC is wonderful about sending out statistical information, and I can compare you to other units your size. They've not released those stats yet for this year. So this is still the exact same amount that was on your schedule last year, but you can still see how you compare to other units your size. This just has your cash, your fund balance available, your property tax collection rates over the last 3 years, and some other information we pulled out of your financial statements. I will go over, and this applies to this and to the colorful spreadsheet from LGC. Your fund balance available is basically your cash minus your liabilities. LGC takes that as a percentage of your total expenditures, and legally, you're supposed to have at least 8% of fund balance available. That means you can cover 1 month's expenses if there's an emergency, if there's a shortfall in your state revenues, if the county is late getting you the property taxes. LGC used to say they really wanted that to be 25%, which means you could cover 3 months' expenses. They are now saying, and they started this last year, it depends more on your expenditures. So if you're a bigger municipality with lots of pockets to pull resources from, then the 25% cushion is good. If you're a smaller municipality, then they up it and they base it on your expenditures. So for the town of Fairview, their threshold for you is 71%, which means you could cover 8.5 months expenditures in the event of an emergency or a contingency. You've got that. Your fund balance available as of June 30, 22 is 99.47% of your general fund expenditures. So you've met the LGC threshold, which is good. And you've met it for years. There's a little dip in it this year compared to the last 2 years, but that's simply because you've purchased town hall and you've made improvements and you can use some of your fund balance, for valid reasons. And then the last thing I need to go over with you is the colorful spreadsheet. This is provided by LGC, the Local Government Commission of the state of North Carolina. We have to enter information into an Excel spreadsheet that they provide, and we are required to print this and give this to you. This was new last year. I kind of went over it in detail last year. I'm not going to bother you with that this year. The first page is all about that fund balance available that we just discussed. Their threshold is 71%, yours was 99.47, so you're good. The second page deals with if you have a deficit fund balance or if you appropriated fund balance last year and you spent it this year, that does not apply to y'all, so there's no issue on the second page. The third page is if you have a water sewer fund, if you provide water and sewer to your citizens, you do not, so that whole page doesn't apply to you. And the next page does not apply to you because that's if you provide electricity to your citizens. So we just have a page and that together. All of this is where we answer questions when we submit your audit package to the state, and everything is good. If there is something red on this page, you're supposed to have a written response to LGC. The red on your page is in error. LGC updated this spreadsheet after we submitted your audit. If your only finding was a lack of segregation of duties, then they don't care. I mean, they do care, but they don't want you to write a written response to them. I think last year you had to do a written response, and they realized that this applies to so many of our units. We're not going to require a written response if that's your only finding. So after we prepared this and submitted it to the state, they went in and updated their Excel spreadsheet a couple of weeks later. So really that's not red. Just ignore that red. You do not, Daryl, you do not have to provide a written response to the state. As long as the only thing is lack of segregation of duties or the fact that we prepared your financial statements, they don't require a written response. So don't be alarmed at that red. They also want to know that question number 17, if you had a finance officer the entire fiscal year, we've seen in a lot of units where they don't have a finance officer the whole year or they have an interim, and that's created some issues. So LGC really hammering down on that. They want to know, did you have a finance officer the whole year? When was the finance officer appointed? So you're fine there. And then the very last page, you're good on it too. The question 18 wants to know if you were late on any of your debt payments, which you were not. Question 19 deals with entities that have an electric fund, which you do not. And then question 20 is, were there any other issues that were communicated to you by the auditor that you need to respond to the agency about? And there are not. And so that is all I have.
Any questions for Danielle? Well, you did a very good job with today.
Well, and I'm always available by phone call or email or text. I'm actually going out of town to visit this week for my nephew graduated Appalachian. Other than that, I'm available.
Thank you for getting it done on time.
You are welcome. It has been a struggle. Daryl and I were talking about it. There's been turnover in our office and everything just seems to take longer and longer to get from clients, and the state is requiring more and more, and we have some late audits this year, and I hate that, but you're not one of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't like having to write those letters.
I don't like having to write those letters either.
Explain why we didn't.
Well, if it had been this year, it would have been all my fault. It would not be your fault.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item number 2, discuss and act on cutting off the rental house from the park property. Me and I have been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. If we get a park grant from the state, we're required to hold that property as park property for 25 years. And if we were to ever decide to do something with the rental house, we wouldn't be able to do anything other than something with the park. So we thought that it might be good to just go ahead and have the rental house surveyed off of the park property. So what I would just recommend is if you would authorize Jerry and me to figure out how much of that property we need to survey out, stake it, get a surveyor in there to survey it, so that we could cut that property off. So if we do get a part of the grant, we wouldn't have to worry about the rental house being tied up as part of the park. We could do something else with it if we so chose. So that's kind of where our head is on it.
Part of that is going to be up there in our parking area that we use for parking, but we can still continue using it because it's our property. It's not going to affect any of the use of it that we use it right now for. It's just to protect us, the town, later on if for some reason or another we decide to make some changes or put something there. Maybe way down the road, they decide they want to move the town hall from here up there and build a new one. Well, they couldn't do it because it's not considered park. So I think I've been thinking about this for a good while, and all of a sudden it come up a possibility of us being able to get a grant again. I thought it's a good time to consider this.
Tricia, Gary, your thoughts?
Well, it's a good question. This is probably a stupid question, but the people that have rented the house and their lease is the lease property designated as a certain amount of land to where if we do that, will that impact what they pay for their lease?
No.
No.
They have the house and the yard. They're responsible for the yard immediately around the house, keeping that boat.
It's just like we're cutting a lot off of a big piece of property, and that's what we are. It's just a large lot.
Tricia, your thoughts?
Makes sense to me. I know we've been talking about it a while, but makes sense.
I'll entertain a motion then to allow Jerry and I to stake off what we want to cut off and then get a surveyor involved in cutting that property off.
I'll make a motion. We allow Phil and Jerry to determine the amount of property that needs to be cut off and have a survey and and then that be determined as to how much we have. I don't have to do, I don't have to say this, once we determine how much, once we get it surveyed, is it gonna take a motion after that to make it happen? Or is it all one and the same?
All one and the same.
So once we determine how much, part of the motion will be that it will be cut off and will be separate from park property.
Right. We have a motion to a second.
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? The motion carries. Jerry and I will get together and get that done, hopefully very soon. Okay, move to item 3, Christmas gifts for staff. Traditionally, we have done something for our staff at Christmas time. I know we haven't done a lot in the past. I'd like to see us do a little more this year than what we've done in the past. I was thinking about, this is just a number that popped in my head, $150 for each of our employees.
I think they're very deserving and that we should increase what we've done.
How much did we do last year? Bill?
I think it's 50. $50, I think it was.
Jerry, what are your thoughts?
I have no problem with it.
All right, I have a motion for Christmas gifts of $150 each for Teresa, Daryl, Ed, and Spencer. And Jerry. Jerry's an employee too.
Yeah.
No, just so you know, I have to withhold tax on that, so it'll be a little less than that.
I would like to move that we approve Christmas gift bonus of $150 each for Teresa, Daryl, Ed, Spencer, and Jerry.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Second, I have a question. Can we, to make it seem more realistic for the amount of work that is involved, can you determine what the tax would be?
Yeah, I can gross it up.
And go ahead and take it to where they actually get the
Yeah.
$150?
I can do that.
We'll modify your motion to that effect.
Yes, I would modify the motion to take care of the tax.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I can vote on that.
Well, since you didn't vote, it's a positive vote. And the motion carries. We do appreciate everything that y'all do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to council comments. Gary?
No, I guess I just wanted, I know it'll be said after me, so I wouldn't get my little part of it, but the town of Fairview is to be commended by allowing us as councilmen to appropriate the money to have the festival we've been having. And thanks to the town for doing that, but also thanks to the people to the volunteers and the city and town employees that make it happen. So once again, it was unbelievable what took place Saturday night. I think it set a new standard, and we just need to, as a town council, we need to look at and adapt to where we can make it better in the future for whatever it takes to make that happen. Because the bar has been set so high, we can't let the bar go below the bar in the future. So thanks once again.
Appreciate it.
I agree with everything that's been said about the Winter Festival. It was just a spectacular event, and people are still talking about it. So I think we can be proud of those who planned and carried it out for us. One additional thing I just wanted to mention, I've been representing the town on some different committees in the county, and one really interesting thing that I've done in the past month was what they call a simulation of poverty. that was quite an interesting exercise. Sort of like playing a game where you take on the role of a person, and the role that I had was the father of a family. I had like a 20-year-old daughter who had a baby, and then I also had a 9-year-old son. My wife had left me, and we had to go through all of what people in situations like that have to deal with, all the agencies that they can go to get help, and how long you might have to stand in line, or what might happen if you're refused help when it's finally your turn to speak to somebody. That it was quite a learning experience. So maybe there will be other opportunities for some of us to participate in that. Certainly gives you some food for thought.
Jerry? I just want to add to the rest of them's comments about the park. I don't know how it's done, but it seems like every year it just keeps getting better and better. Decorations keep getting better and better. And I know I talked to some of them today that's on that event committee, and they were short of help this time, and they still pulled it off and did a super job. I thought the Piedmont band was great. They played a little bit on one side of the pond and then moved over to the other side, and they kept some music going about all the time. We had one problem with our parking, and that was people cutting out down the lower end in that wet spot. It really cut up the yard, and real bad. I haven't walked out in it yet because it's muddy, but we may have to do a little bit of smoothing out down there to keep from knocking the wheels off the lawnmowers when man mows it next time. But I've talked with Mike on the facilities committee, and we're going to put up, and I think we can do it in what little bit we're allowed to spend. If not, we'll bring it back to the council. But we're going to put some posts in up the left side of the drive, all the way up to the drive, and run a chain through. You've seen these fences where just one chain, like a log chain going from post to post, weaving up through there. And we're going to put that in so we can prevent that next time. Plus, it helps with the parking and flow of traffic. I know there's some people stuck down there in it Saturday night, and I didn't know if we get out and push them out because they shouldn't have been down there to begin with. They've been in the driveway. I should probably got out and helped them a little bit, but that is one addition that we're going. I think we need for events, especially this winter event when we got so much problem with the area that we can use for parking.
I think one quick comment, two things. One, I think the highest comment that can be made, other than what we've said, for it, this is the second time I've heard that people said they came to it, that it reminded them of the Hallmark movie presentation, which I thought was a great remark. And I just mentioned, there's something to think about. I just mentioned that Lisa and Spencer was there earlier. I really feel sorry for them doing the festival in October, and then this one in December, because this works them to death. Could there ever be the thought to maybe stretching out, we have a spring fest rather than a fall fest, to get a break between the two? I know the weather may be more chance of rain, I don't know. Something that maybe we may want to think about to make their life easier. And I think they said you all had people have asked about doing something in the spring. So
we've had vendors ask if they could just do a vendor day and just come out and sell things in the spring.
Just food for thought.
That might be something interesting think about, because there's so many towns that have fall festivals. We could be different, have a fair festival instead.
Anything else, Jerry?
That's all I've got.
Ed, do you have anything? Answer.
Sure. So thank you for the nice comments. We ended up having to go to Dollar General in a really fast rush and gave out over 700 stockings to children. We had 32 churches and businesses, which I'm happy with because I was stuck at 12 for a while and really, really nervous about it. So we ended up paying workers this year because we had to. We have our committee and we have a little bit of volunteers that are actually able to give time. Some people, Scott travels for work, so he leaves for a week at a time. He can't get out to the park and help us. So just things like that we had to pay workers for. We had new music this year. We introduced Metrolina Christian Academy and the Gathering Church as our performers. They loved it. They said sign them up for next year. Kind of pinballing off of what Jerry said, we had to pull out 6 cars. So we really, really need a parking lot or something. A lot of people are parkers. We're getting a lot of grief because people didn't want to put their car in mud. They didn't want to get stuck up. They didn't want it to be so far. We just had a lot of issues with parking. We hit our breaking point where we were completely overwhelmed by the amount of people that came. I've been posting on Facebook and we only had 300 people that said they were coming to the event. So I was like, oh, nobody's going to show up. And then everybody came and oh my gosh, we were not ready for it. So we just need to kind of look into, if we're going to continue to grow, we need to also grow our park. We've got to have a parking spot for these people in case it does rain. Within 30 minutes of the festival starting, we had started transporting people from Bethlehem to the park. And the driver said, nobody really complained about that, but it was super dangerous on 601. We had 2 officers, but only one showed up. The other one canceled. So with that being said, we had thought about maybe if we could have another exit area and maybe we use the house's driveway as a possible exit. Don't know. And another issue we had was we have no power. So the power that we did have, we had lots of things plugged into it and we literally had cords that were starting to burn. So we had to start unplugging. So it would have been a lot more lit up, but we just had to take it all out of the plugs. So we just have some things we're requesting from you guys. I know those are big things, but if you want to continue, like you said, to make these bigger and better, we gotta have some parking and some power. That's the only thing, and lights.
That's a good question. I don't know if you looked into it, but those who've been to the Monroe Air Show in November, they've got an agreement with, I guess, it's the county or the city, that they use school buses to transport people from the parking lot to the thing.
You have to pay for them.
Well, I know, I was wondering, is that cost prohibitive to do the?
I don't know. I actually have never looked into that.
That's how they do it. They have 80 to 100,000 people on those 2 days, and they use school buses to move people from the parking lot back and forth to the event. So I don't know if that's something they want to look into and see if the county will work with us on that. Just something to think about.
Also, we would love if you could join us at our next January meeting, if you wish, just to kind of discuss how we can do bigger and better things and what that would look like.
Have you thought about food vendors for the Winter Festival?
We've always said we don't want to take away the true meaning of Christmas, which would be people going out there and selling. But it's getting harder and harder for people to volunteer their time and to give out free things. So possibly looking into, if we get food vendors though, you have to allow our churches or businesses to be able to sell things. And with it being a 2-hour event, we just never got into, or it was 3 hours this year. We never got into the food vendors, but that's something we could look at. But then again, like I said, we would have to change the thoughts of not allowing vendors to sell items. So.
A lot of food vendors won't come out for 3 hours.
Yeah, we got a lot, because our first year we looked into it, a lot of them said they're, like even the music in the park, we have a lot that say they're not coming out for a 2-3 hour event. It's not worth their time because they gotta pay for the permits and everything.
Daryl, you have anything? Teresa?
No.
Jerry and I, along with Ed and Teresa, met with John Wood, with Benish, and Mike Metlin and Bill Ripple to talk about the second phase of the park and give them a little more guidance. And what we told them is basically to concentrate on the trail grant, not be concerned with the Arctic grant for right now, since the trail is the number one thing at the community meeting. Plus our money's limited, so we're gonna start with that. So he's gone back to the drawing board, he's gonna come back to us and hopefully walk the trail sometime later this month, kind of get an idea of where the trail is gonna be. And if anyone would like to walk with us when we do that, you're certainly welcome to do that. I think Jerry and I and Mike are gonna try to go with him when they walk the trail. Several of us did attend the fire department groundbreaking on November 10th, had a chance to talk with the county manager, one of the commissioners, and I thought that went really well with the fire department. Thank you, Gary, for filling in for me last month. I had a colonoscopy that day, and I didn't think that I probably should be, wasn't sure I'd have all my faculties back, mental faculties back by that night, so thank you, Gary, for filling in for me. Teresa put something on the website and also on the Facebook page recently that I asked her to put on there. The Community Development Block Grant that we partnered with the county on. They are providing some money for septic system repair in the county for low and moderate income people. The guidelines are on there. There's a link on there that you can go to. So anyone who's having problems with their septic system, if they're in the low to moderate income area, they can possibly get some help from the Community Development Block Grant. So that's all I have. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks, that was a great lunch today. Good response from everybody.
We appreciate all the volunteers that